I didn't want to stop, but once I got started. Okay, we are winding down our study of our faith development lessons. And so we've looked at the reasons that we would seek to develop our faith, what faith is, different aspects of how we go through the stages of faith, and are imprinted upon from early ages and then even throughout our life. And we have associations and affiliations, and we mimic things that we hear and see, and then we actually search those things out and find out if those things are true. And then we continue to work on those things, and those things become more solidified. And then in that process, we're working closer to having that mature faith. And you can be doing the right things and have the right answers, just like Christ had at the age of 12, and he was wise beyond his years, but we also know that he was still subject unto his parents up through the remainder of his young life, and probably even early adulthood. And so he still had to have maturity in the ideas of application and fully coming to an awareness of those truths more in experiential fashion, being able to put those to use in your life. And so even if we're the same way in our faith, if we obey the gospel and we're a newborn, but then we develop quite quickly, then we also need to understand that there's some things that we just learn through experience, both positive and negative. And so either through successes that we have and things that wisdoms that we follow after, or mistakes that we make. Either way, they should be a learning process for us to help us see how we can overcome that the next time. So any defeat, it should also be an opportunity to learn and to grow. And so this lesson, primarily, we're going to look at the things that would challenge us. And so we looked at several things that would be synonymous with or that would be a part of the maturing process. You know, things that we would avoid. We would get past childishness and selfishness and, you know, all those type of things, jealousy and envy and backbiting. You know, that's more immature type ideas and ways of communicating. And so we know that would be immature. And so we're seeking to be mature. And so there's going to be characteristics that would be embodied by a mature Christian. And we talked about that some last week too. Just they would have their life in order. They would be practicing their things that would help them be close in their relationship with God. They would be kind of unwavered by different things that they might be confronted with, not just challenges, but especially if somebody else had some type of shortcoming or somebody else fell away, that wouldn't affect their faith. And so those are going to be qualities that would be exemplified by somebody who is maturing in the faith. And they would be able to express in a variety of settings to a variety of different people in more than one way, hopefully, how they came to understand the truth, show them the truth, and help them come to a knowledge and understanding of the truth, and to speak that truth in love. And so that's going to be I won't say the ultimate, but we said that's why you're maturing. That's the purpose of the whole gospel. I mean, we saw the whole creation was made in such that the seed produced after its kind. And so that's how it kept going. It stayed alive as it was propagating. And they were to be fruitful and multiply. And we saw that happen on the earth in the vegetative and the animal kingdom. But also, we see in the spiritual kingdom the same is true. If we plant those seeds and we take care of that, then we will exemplify the pattern that God put in the Word. So the more we learn about God's Word and put that in our minds and our hearts and in our words and our deeds, the more that is a working and active faith, like James talked about in James, especially the first couple of chapters. It has to be active. So it's more than just a verbal confession. It is a manner of life. And many times it'll say, let your conversation. And that idea is not just in the way they talk and the communications that they have. It is, and it does include that, but it was just their whole way of life, their whole manner of living would be something that would exemplify that. And so when we're doing all those things right, we need to understand that a very natural part of the process is going to be the challenges and the difficulties and the tests and the tribulations that will come up on us via Satan trying to challenge our faith or call our faith into question or judgment, because we said he's the accuser, he's the liar. So we're going to have to test things in order to see his deceptions, and we're going to have to also, resist him in ways that might apply to different ones of us in different areas, because we're going to have different areas of sin, so and different areas of shortcoming, and so we're all going to have to become aware of that ourselves and to help each other and to try to understand each other's challenges so that we can help protect the entirety of the body. But we have to understand that the devil, if we see him like an adversary, he's called the adversary. So if he's in this battle against our Father and all that is good and righteous, then in order to be in the kingdom, then it stands to reason that there's going to be times of battle. There's going to be times of war. There's going to be times of convincing and convicting the gainsayers, standing up against those things that are false doctrine. And all that's going to be a part of the natural process of maturing, but we need to understand that there's going to be some pushback. And typically, if we're in a good place, I think that's why the scriptures tell us, let he that thinketh he stand take heed lest he fall. If we ever get to a place where we feel like we're pretty strong or mighty or secure, that's when we really need to kind of check ourselves. And I said that earlier about falling short. Sometimes we can, through our mistakes, we can learn a lot about ourselves or what not to do. And when we go through that, we understand kind of the human condition. Sometimes people might feel a little broken, or sometimes we see people that are, kind of down and stuck in this place of life. And, we need to understand that is going to be part of our role too in our maturity is learning how to meet people kind of where they are and help them, encourage them in a way that might get them back where they need to be in the body too. And so the devil's going to try to see any avenue that he can get in our own personal life, in our families, in our relationships with our spouses and our children, in our relationships amongst one another, and our relationships, especially if they're unequally yoked with people in the world. Sometimes, we can complain about things that go on in the church and tell family members or people that we know in the world or friends that don't, share our faith, and, it can make the church look bad. There's all these ways that the devil is trying to kind of infiltrate us and divide us and distract us and kind of lull us into apathy. There's a lot of different tools that the devil will use, but we are not ignorant of his devices. And for me, again, these things seem overly simple in many regards, but that's just the way it is with me. That's why I think things are cliche, is because it's just kind of a slice of life. We all go through these things, and sometimes the simplest thing or the thing that we should do most is the thing that we neglect, or that can just be part of life, at least at different times. And so we are told to put on the full armor of God. So we're trying to equip ourselves to be ready for any type of spiritual situation or resistance or attack. And I thought a lot about, because one of our first passages is Ephesians 6, talking about the putting on the armor of God. And I've been thinking about and looking at, especially the verses that talk about the men, quite ye like men, like stand strong like a man and be a man and put on the armor of God and be ready for battle. And so just like in the military, there is the beginning, initial training, where everybody goes through at least some form of basic training, and they do different things to make sure their physical bodies are in order, and they know how to do certain tasks with their weapon and how to maintain their gear, and they usually start to learn how to do all the basic survival tools, and they get challenged, and it's to equip them to be prepared to a certain level always, so at the drop of a hat you can go and perform for as long as just about possible, to be on task and to be present in the war and in the effort. And so the same is true in the spiritual kingdom, or the spiritual army. And so if we look at that same concept, then, and I think all of us would agree that we've seen, at least at times and occasions, and with certain individuals or certain people, maybe families, that we encourage them to obey the gospel, and we taught them certain basics, and then once they get in the body, sometimes maybe we don't continue to feed them to the point where they can really mature as quickly or as fast or really ever be quite as grounded. Sometimes we miss those occasions early on. It's kind of like missing a developmental stage when you're growing up. We know it's important for us to learn certain things along the way. It's never too late to learn anything, but we have learned that if you learn certain things at certain ages that you're capable of, and you continue to compound that there's a most beneficial way to get everything that you can out of that learning experience, and an application which would also help you attain wisdom. But if you leave some of those things out along the way, then sometimes there can be gaps in our ability to mature fully across all areas of our life, and also to be the same way, to be on guard and be ready for the battle in every different way. And so for me, again, not to overuse illustrations, but since Paul does talk about, and we've already mentioned this, him buffeting his body and bringing it in subjection, and him fighting, and not just kind of shadow boxing, but really preparing for the fight, and him telling us that we're in a fight, in a battle, not against flesh and blood, but against powers and principalities. There's a spiritual battle going on, and to what extent, how that looks behind the scenes, we can't say, but I do know that when Elisha was on the city wall and his servant was afraid when the Syrians were coming to overtake him, and Elisha asked God to remove the veil from his eyes, and he saw that spiritual battle going on with the host of the Lord, against the enemy. And so when we take that into consideration, we do see that there's some battle that's taking place even beyond that which our eyes can see. And I do think that it would behoove us all to think about, again, don't take my words out of context, but we talk about the spirit and the spirit of things. We do influence each other's and each other's spirit and our place in our relationship with ourselves and with each other. And just like we might describe the spirit of Christmas or the spirit of giving as something, I do think that there is an influence that we have with the fruit of the Spirit. And so oftentimes we can lift each other up with our spirit or maybe bring each other down if we're not careful. And God, if we trust in Him and we follow those things and remind each other and comfort each other with the words that we should be reminded of with Scripture when things are difficult, to remind each other in all kinds of different temptations and trials that we have to choose to be joyful, to be content and thankful and patient, and that's going to be a part of the process. And so if we can help each other see the wiles of the devil and see that he's looking to, again, catch us in a weak place, that he's that roaring lion who's, just sitting there waiting to ambush us, just to catch us when we're not paying attention or we're a little distracted or we're getting a mouthful and got our head down, and next thing you know, he's done come out of the shadows and pounced on us. And again, to finish my idea from a while ago, to me, fighting the devil or fighting temptation is much like what I would consider the current mixed martial arts is. Used to you had wrestling and certain kinds of wrestling, Greco wrestling, you had boxing, and so a very specific sport. And then you started having some other kinds of fighting, and then before long they started putting all the different martial arts and the different fighting together, and they were going to see which school of fighting was the best or strongest or best. And so what they found over time is that the more skills that you know, the better off you are, because they began to see very quickly that jiu-jitsu was kind of like the chess of fighting. And so those that had really got into the jiu-jitsu were outsmarting and learning ways to, again, counteract the attacks of the different person. And some people that you would think would be undefeated and were for a long, long time and became champions. Sometimes a person would just come in and just have one little skill from a certain set of martial arts. It was a little different. Or bring them just a little bit of something different and cause their whole system kind of to unravel. And the devil can do things like that too. I noticed for me in my life, it seems as I've gotten to certain places and maybe plateaued or got a little too comfortable or maybe too prideful, a lot of different things. It was kind of like the devil got one on me. It's kind of like a move. I don't know if anybody's ever, played chess with somebody or done some wrestling or some kind of contest where it's maybe one-on-one and they get you. and you're like, man, they worked a little harder, or they learned that skill, or they got that, ooh, they got me. We can kind of get got sometimes when it comes to the temptations of the devil. And so that's is going to be a part of the process of learning how we, sometimes we learn the hard ways. And there's a great war, but there's going to be a lot of different battles and skirmishes. And so if we are aware that the devil's going to tempt us in certain ways, just like he tempted Eve, just like he tempted Christ, just as he tempts all man, he's going to attack us in lust of the flesh, lust of the eye, and the pride of life. So he's going to take things and thoughts and things other people say, and he's going to put those things in. And again, there's some things that are a little bit mysterious. And so where do thoughts come from, and how do you get a thought in your head? And I think we all could say, that sometime we sang a commercial or some kind of jingle or picked up something that we didn't even hardly realize that we picked up, and then next thing you know, it was kind of a part of our active mind, or maybe our talk and maybe our expressions, and we just didn't quite realize that we picked it up. And sometimes the devil can slip things in sometimes. Sometimes he can catch us sleeping before we even have an opportunity to learn from the parable of the sower. Remember, he swept up that which was on the wayward soil, the hard ground. And so before the sermon was over, they never had a chance. But also, there were those who have the truth, they have faith, they believe, and with great joy they believe. And anon, with joy, they receive the word, and it springs up and it's growing, but either there's a lack of depth or there's other things that are there to choke it out. And so, again, those are tactics the devil's going to use to keep us from being as strong as we need to be, lack of root depth, or getting crowded out with distractions of this world and the deceitfulness of the riches of this world, because we know those things just can vanish like that. Yeah.
Just an example, which kind of to me goes along with this, was another attempt was made on the president's life.
Mm-hmm.
Security guard had a bulletproof vest on, and he was shot, and his life was saved. He had studied everything he could to try to recognize the devil, as we would use it in this instance, as the one that was coming to make the attempt on the president's life. They take training, continuous training. They train their bodies and everything with the equipment that they gave them to help them to accomplish these feats is what we would say the Bible does, faith.
Mm-hmm.
It gives us all these things that the helmet of salvation, the breastplate of righteousness, you got the sword, word of God. Take all that and we're fully equipped, not just partially equipped, but fully equipped. And that's, well, I don't need breastplate of righteousness today. I'm good enough. Wherefore you thought you stand.
Mm-hmm.
We got to put the whole armor on and constantly use it, prepare ourselves and all like that. And the armor that you had on saved his life. You got shot and the armor saved you. So to me, it's that way. If in a time when man thought in his own mind what to do, is on evil continuously, got worse and worse and worse, and to the point that God was ready to destroy the earth. So we can't govern ourselves.
Right.
And so we have to depend on the word to direct us, get the fundamentals down. And then from that, we'll grow, and then we'll see how that works, and we can develop it and share it with others.
Right. Billy Wayne, I agree with everything that he said. Hopefully you could hear that as well. And it should be, it will be to different levels with each of us, just like in the parable of the sower. You see that some brought forth fruit on the good and honest soil, 30, 60, 100-fold. So different ones of us are going to learn and study different things at different ways, just like in natural life, different people with different natural talents or abilities or inclinations develop certain or make opportunities in life because they put forth the extra effort, or they compound certain things, or they get certain mentors, or take advantage of some opportunities. And so those can put you in an area to mature more, maybe more faster, grow up a little quicker, maybe get a little stronger quicker, and be ready for the battle. So good points.
You mentioned earlier about the prophet getting to see the insight of what's going on behind the scenes. God never sleeps. You know, sometimes we get caught up in our life situations. We kind of get critical of God. Like, where are you? What are you doing? He's always doing his part. What's going on behind the scenes was that. And he had everybody engaged. He let the prophet see that. This is going on. You know, you can participate or not. But you need to know what's going on. And so God's never asleep. And he knows the battle's going on. He knows what Satan's going to do. And he's doing his part. And we can participate if we want to. Or we can just camp out on where are you and what are you doing. He let him see what he was doing. You know, this is going on all the time. That there's a battle going on. I'm in charge of it. You can participate or not. And part of what the prophet saw was, God had told him, if you ever become unfaithful to me, if you ever leave these other gods in your land, I'm going to see that you take them into captivity. And so what he's doing is what he always does.
Yes, keeping his promises.
Yeah, we can be a participant in that, or we can be in opposition to that. So let him get a little glimpse. God's busy all the time. I mean, he's carrying out his forces all the time. Sometimes all we focus on is what Satan's doing, and the power that Satan has in our life. And the reason for that is we let him have power in our life. And we sometimes doubt God. If God kind of asleep, you have to wake him up and say, hey, don't you know what's going on with me? You know, he knows what's going on with us. And, you know, life's hard. But if we engage in what he tells us to do, regardless of circumstances, we can be part of that, what's going on. This is how he's using us, and this is what he's doing with us. He was doing a lot of things with a lot of people, and the prophet got to see that. Like, okay, you know, I understand God's busy. So we don't need to forget that.
Agreed. And I appreciate also what Billy Wayne was saying about putting on all of the armor. So, you know, get ready all you can and be prepared all the time. And so we would expect that of a soldier with honor and duty. And so if we want to be that type of soldier, then we need to be equipped as well. And that will be what protects us. And just as they had we have our armor, they had theirs, and it quenched the fiery darts of the devil. So if we have that faith, then it will be something that can and should protect us against the attacks, but then also be that sword that helps us in our forward attack. So it'll be more than just a defense. It will also be a forward action. And that's part of our resisting the devil. And so sometimes there has to be a kind of a face-to-face, if you want to say. And we should expect that. Any time that we have a good decision and we're making a good decision, or some opportunity is good, I've noticed, and a lot of people say, man, well, I just made this great decision and then this happened. And we need to understand that we should understand that should be a natural part of the process of life. That we're going to have these choices that come up, and so we've got to choose between this or that, and fear or trust, and obedience or not, like Saul. You know, he kind of devised his own way, and thought he was going to help the Lord out. And so, again, kind of like what Dad was saying, if you don't do it God's way, then it's not going to work out God's way. But if you do it God's way, then you do get these glimpses. And the author of the material didn't say this in the lesson, but I thought of, because just some of the verses that were referred to, like from Proverbs, I thought of verses that talked about, we resist the devil and he flees from us, but also there's this seeing something that's far off. So having the ability to kind of see it coming. I talked about, feeling like the devil kind of outsmarted me. And I'd develop this skill or this defense, or I'd kind of outgrow this temptation or grow beyond it, or get it settled, it would seem like, and then something else would catch me kind of off guard. There'd be some kind of life change or some thing that would come to discourage me. And so it was like, about the time I gained some skill and advanced in my belt, so to speak, even if you get to be a black belt, the enemy, might gang up on you or use other kinds of weaponry and chemical warfare, psychological espionage. It depends on what area of life you're going to be under attack and in what way. And so your particular role and your particular job in the kingdom and your fight in the battle will be unique, and you'll have to look at that. But we do need to understand there's some basic ways that the devil will tempt us, and he's going to do that with basic temptations of the flesh that we understand, but also of that pride of life that's probably more prevalent within the church than the worldly sins. Probably the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eye. We try to do our best to kind of push that aside, and it's kind of more of a sin that stands out that we see. But then going into maybe the area of judgment and hypocrisy, hypocrites, that's going to be where the devil gets us in the church, as he's going to bring us out of the world and get away from those things and those people, and then next thing you know, we can look down our nose and not realize and look at that we need to get the beams out of our own eye before we start getting splinters out of others' eye. And so there is this process that we need to understand is going to be this examination part. And so hopefully within the body, if we're maturing in our faith, then we're going to use those opportunities to examine ourselves, look at ourselves up against Christ, as we studied in James, the perfect law of liberty, get others to help us see the areas that we don't see on our own very good. And so just like in the military, we'd say somebody's got your six, you stand back to back, and even without that, we are told to walk circumspectly, not as fools. So, we're going to be sober and vigilant, always watching for our adversary, the devil, who's just lurking, that lion just seeking to devour us. Then we're looking in 360 degrees. So we're really, you see them again in the military, and are those Secret Service people, and they were just watching, scanning the whole area. And so we need to be like that within the body, be more aware of the attacks. And, we could just go through the motions, or we could study and learn the different ways that he's used. It's kind of like in the military. You have some special forces. You have certain people that have certain deeper characteristics or qualities, and they get more out of it, and they study some special skill or learn some new ways of leadership. And so all those things can be applied to their use in the battle and their ability to make it through different attacks. And so the more we can equip ourselves to know how the devil is tempting us and tempting those around us, then the better off we'll be at preparing ourselves so that we can overcome that, because there's no reason we can't. We know the word, we can say it is written, and also just to help us have that readiness so that we're ready always to give an answer to everyone, and we can do that in a good setting because we'll always be ready. We'll always be prepared and equipped. And so that to me, that's one of the beautiful pictures of what our soldiers are supposed to be, is they're supposed to be a representative of America. And even if they're in a hostile place, they are supposed to treat people with dignity and respect. And Christ taught them that and told them not to complain about their wages, and told other people to respect them in the battle and in their service. And so all those things can be areas that we learn about the battles and the type of manner of soldier that the Lord would want, I think. We got one more lesson. We'll look at it Wednesday night, I guess, and then we'll tie it up. So any questions or comments on the devil? All right. If you don't have lesson 16, it should be on that back table.